my earliest political experience was my father. He was Labour in the 30s. Now, my father was an extremely devout Catholic, but he attached himself to a Labour man by the name of Dick Hennessy, who was with him in the job. He was an engine driver while my father was still only a fireman. And the reason he was a fireman was that the railways were going down at the time and there was no promotion. But eventually he did. During the war, the railways did pick up a bit because there was a shortage of petrol and they were carrying more than they were carrying before the outbreak of hostilities. But the father anyway in the 30s, he supported Hennessy in his efforts to be a TD, and Hennessy did very poorly. He did poorly in terms of votes, but he in terms of political thinking, he was quite conservative. So that was the kind of Labour was in the house, even if it wasn't of a very radical nature. The Labour was in the house, and you I was supposing, like most kids at the time, you went according to your family. If your family was Labour or Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, that's the way you went yourself. Although I had one experience, this will give you an idea of what stage I was at. We were all going over, the kids that are not around, but we were going over to the Rialto Cinema on this Saturday afternoon. And I was given out, the Spanish Civil War was on at the time, and I was pro-Franco. Because the house was my father was pro-Franco, and he never dreamed the church. That was the law of the church.
Yes.
So I was going on about pro-Franco Cathology, and this fella suddenly, he's smaller than I was. He said, "Joe, they were an elected government." And I just got along. I was bigger than he was, and I just got on by it doesn't matter a damn what they were. They're anti-church. And that was now I would have been in my late teens, 16 or 17 at that stage. But the thing that changed me was I was in the Gaelic League in Inchicore, and I got talking to Donald McGregor, the brother of the Lee McGregor who was killed in Spain. And I said to McGregor, I'm going to say now that my great interest when I was a young fella was football and the theatre. Naturally the football came first, and it still is an avid interest. But I said to McGregor, says I was going to plays, and I said to McGregor on this occasion, that I was interested in the theatre. So with that, he gave me a list of plays that I might go to, and they were being done by the New Theatre Group, and he had been a New Theatre Group, and McGregor spoke, full mouth, and he said, they have become very, very bad, but however, if you want to see a play, go. And they had a play called, on at the time, Awake and Sing, by Clifford O'Debs. Now, Clifford O'Debs was a left-wing American playwright. He wrote that famous Waiting for Lefty. And so I went to Awake and Sing, and there was nothing particularly political that I can remember about it as a play. But anyway, I kept going. I went round to the back of the stage when the thing was over, and I gave my name and I joined the new theatre group. And I quite innocently joined it as just a theatre, a dramatic interest. The politics were no way part of it. So I kept going. Then I got a not small part in a play, etc., etc. And then one evening, I was coming home after a rehearsal with a fellow called Jerry McCarthy. Jerry had won his spurs to me because he was the nicest guy I ever met, the most friendliest fellow, and he was very, very left, and I had been so inured to listening to the left being demonised that this was a wake up. Although I still had the argument about Franco, and I was arguing pro Franco with him, and he was arguing for the elected government. So it slowly then. There was another play we did called Six Men of Dorset. Now, Six Men of Dorset, there was a play about the agricultural farmers' rebellion in Britain. Yeah. And I remember I was sitting on the side of the stage. I had a part in it, and I was sitting on the side of the stage listening to the dialogue, and it was really meaty stuff. And it hit me. Then something bloody hit me, and it was never the same afterwards. But so that I can claim that that was the origin of my going left.
So the journey, Joe, from the theatre and an interest in left-wing ideas and a fascination, shall we say, and an interest in Bernard Shaw, how did that lead to being a Labour councillor and being active in the Labour Party?
Well, all right. Well, then I'll just give it the factual, what happened factually in that connection. Right. Donald, I was very close to the McGregor family. Right. They were living fairly close. They were in the same residential area.
Just to, not to cut across you, Joe. Just to, if I could say one thing, Mrs. McGregor had a son who was with the colony column in Spain and who was killed in Spain.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that's just.
Well, I got a further extension of that. Joe Monks gave me this. I don't know whether you ever heard.
Yes, I knew Joe.
Joe Monks was in the International Brigade as well, and he was telling me that it was thought that when the Civil War broke out in Spain, Lee McGregor was in Moscow. He had been a member of the Communist Party in Dublin, and he went, as they were wont to do at the time, he went to Moscow, and then he had heard that Donald had not gone out. And the reason Monks was very understanding, he excused Donald for not going. Mrs. McGregor pleaded with Donald not to go out. Right. She'd already lost a son, and what about tragedy is tragedy. Yeah. Her husband was killed in the First World War.
Yeah.
So, but she was a communist.
Yes.
Mrs. McGregor was a communist. So I got very close to herself and Donald.
Yeah.
So Donald thought he liked to present himself as a Labour candidate in the local elections in what year? 45.
Yeah.
In 45. And Mrs. McGregor said, "No, Donald, you wouldn't be the right person. The right person to vote forward is Joe." And she, because first of all, well, the father had built up a reputation in Inchicore, in the works, as a good, fiery trade union representative without any ideology.
Yes.
Well, he had an ideology, but it certainly wasn't socialist or left wing.
Yes.
But he was a man that could speak with great fire, and he acquired a reputation as a good shop steward in the works.
Yes.
So Mrs. McGregor, his name got around, and Mrs. McGregor says, "I think Joe should go forward. He would have the father's support." So the father did have the father's support.
Right.
A very conservative support.
Yes.
Well, not that it would be unjust to just say it was going to. The father was truly Labour. I mean, he reacted to injustice.
Yes, as the broad Labour movement always has.
He reacted in protest against injustice. So I went forward. That was 45.
Yes.
And to my own surprise, I was elected.
You were young, Joe, at that time.
I was 22.
Right. In terms of councillors, that must have made you pretty young.
I was rated at the time as the youngest councillor in Ireland. Well, I don't know that it was ever put to the test that I was the youngest, but anyway, it was a defence.
If we put it on film, it shall become a fact.
It was a defence. It was I could put a good defence on it.
Yes.
But I was nearly. I was 22, but I wasn't far off being 23.
Well.
But I certainly was the youngest councillor on the Dublin Corporation.
Yeah. Labour had quite a success.
Yes, we got. Well, they had already succeeded in the 43 local elections when they got 13 seats. Now we lost 2 in 45.
Yes.
I was one of the 11.
Yes.
That's what was elected.
Right. And tell me just about that council, Joe. Were the Larkins involved in that? Was Jim Larkin a councillor?
Not young Jim. Dennis was. Dennis was one of the councillors. One of the Labour councillors who was elected.
And Jim Larkin himself.
Oh, not Jim. Oh, Jim Larkin himself. Yes, he was. Yes.
So you would have been.
I was well entrenched with the Larkin.
Right.
And
your impressions, Joe, of Jim Larkin at that stage. What was he? What did he convey to you? What did you make? Jim Larkin.
Big Jim.
Big Jim. Yes.
Jim Senior.
Yes. Yes.
Unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I made some remark, and I don't know what it was. He objected to what I said and walked out of the meeting at a meeting of the Labour group, and he walked out of the meeting in high dudgeon. Now later on, that was in 46, and he died in early 47.
Yeah.
Well, in 46, a row broke out between the corporation and McEntee, a Fianna Fáil minister. And I think he was Minister for Local Government, so we would direct reference to the corporation. But I went to press against him, and Larkin said, was speaking on this McEntee affair, and he said, he quoted my letter as Councillor Deasy wrote,
Yes.
and he says, and he's an intelligent young man. So,
And he didn't get everything right, Joe.
so I went into the corporation the following morning. We used to besiege officials trying to get people houses, but there was 21,000 on the housing list, and it was quite a miracle to get. And you see, during the war, there was practically no building done at all.
Yeah. Yes.
So I did my usual visits to the housing section, pleading the case of somebody, some family or other. And then this was the fellow in charge of the housing, the official. I can never remember his name, but he said to me with a sly look, how does it feel to be referred to as a young council, publicly referred to as as an intelligent young man? And I said, I've been called worse.